I should have known something was wrong when Marcus texted me to meet him at the Sapphire Atrium instead of our usual coffee shop. Not the quiet corner booth where we'd had our first date, but the center of the mall's grand floor beneath the massive crystal chandelier where everyone could see. At 27, I'd learned to trust my instincts. Public displays made my skin crawl, especially for someone like me who preferred to blend into the background. But this was Marcus, my fiancé. Our 2-year anniversary deserved something special, even if it pushed me outside my comfort zone. The Sapphire Atrium occupied the heart of the Grandview Luxury Mall, all marble floors and soaring arches with high-end boutiques lining every corridor. I'd walked through here 100 times on my way to the restaurant where I worked, always in my server's uniform, always invisible to the wealthy shoppers. Today, I'd made an effort. My peach satin blouse tucked neatly into fitted black trousers, my hair styled in a low bun, my best heels clicking against the polished floor. Marcus had insisted I dress nice. He said he had a surprise. My stomach twisted as I approached the center of the atrium. A crowd had already gathered, phones out, forming a loose circle around something I couldn't quite see. Your crowd, not your fiancé. The distinction should have been my second warning. I pushed through the edge of the circle, my server's instinct to stay unnoticed warring with the growing dread in my chest. The Sapphire Atrium attracted a certain clientele. Wealthy professionals, socialites, influencers looking for the perfect backdrop. I recognized faces from the restaurant, customers who'd never bothered to learn my name. Easily 100 people, all dressed in designer labels and watching something at the center of the circle like it was scheduled entertainment. Marcus stood in the middle of the marble floor, prime position for maximum visibility. But he wasn't alone. Vanessa Chin occupied the space beside him, her hand resting on his arm with casual ownership. Platinum blonde hair in perfect waves, a dress that cost more than 3 months of my rent, and a smile that had never quite reached her eyes in all the years I'd called her my best friend. She'd made Forbes 30 Under 30 list last spring. I'd celebrated with her over cheap wine in my tiny apartment. I stopped 6 feet from them. My purse, containing the anniversary gift I'd saved 2 months to buy, suddenly felt impossibly heavy on my shoulder. Marcus turned toward me, his expression carefully neutral.
Tessa.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Like I was someone he'd summoned for a meeting, not the woman wearing his grandmother's engagement ring. Marcus, what's going on? My voice came out smaller than I wanted, swallowed by the atrium's vast space. He gestured vaguely at the crowd around us. We should talk. There's something I need to say, and I wanted to be honest about it.
Public. Clear.
I didn't move closer. Every instinct I possessed, the same ones that told me when a table was about to complain, when a customer was going to stiff me on the tip, screamed at me to leave, to walk away before whatever was coming could land. But shame locked my feet in place. I wouldn't run. Not in front of 100 witnesses, with their phones pointed at me. Marcus glanced at Vanessa, who nodded with practiced encouragement. He cleared his throat, loud enough for the crowd to hear. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my future, about what I need in a partner as I build my career. His voice carried, performative, about compatibility, about matching ambitions. My fingers found the engagement ring on my left hand, twisting it nervously. What are you talking about? Vanessa and I have been spending time together, working on a business venture. He reached for Vanessa's hand, threading their fingers together with casual intimacy that spoke of practice. She understands my world. The networking, the social expectations, the level I'm trying to reach. She's the kind of partner who can actually help me succeed. The words hit like a slap, but I was still catching up, still trying to make sense of what was happening. Around us, the murmuring had started. Excited whispers. The sound of people sensing drama. You brought me here to break up with me? The question came out barely above a whisper. I'm ending our engagement, yes. Marcus's voice was steady, rehearsed. He gestured to my hand. The ring. My grandmother's ring. I'm going to need that back. Heat flooded my face, creeping down my neck. My hands moved to the ring automatically, but I couldn't make my fingers work to remove it. Vanessa leaned in, her voice pitched to carry sympathy she clearly didn't feel. It's nothing personal, Tess. Marcus just needs someone from his world. Someone who fits. She paused, letting the implication hang. You're sweet, really, but let's be honest. A waitress and a financial consultant? It was always going to be temporary. The word waitress landed like a weapon. The way she said it, like my job was proof of some fundamental deficiency. I work hard. My voice shook. I've supported you through, and I appreciate that. Marcus cut me off smoothly. But people talk, Tessa. They see me with you, and they make assumptions. About my judgment. About my standards. He held out his hand expectantly. The ring. Please. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Around us, phones were raised higher. Camera flashes sparked in my peripheral vision. Someone was recording this. Multiple someones. The humiliation was being documented in real time, ready to be uploaded, shared, turned into entertainment. I should have said something devastating. Should have maintained some shred of dignity, with a perfect exit line that would haunt him forever. Instead, my shaking fingers finally managed to twist the ring free. I held it for one moment, this symbol of a future that had just disintegrated, then placed it in his outstretched palm. Keep it, I managed, my voice distant and hollow. Give it to someone who fits your world. Marcus pocketed the ring, without ceremony. Vanessa was already smiling at him, her hand on his chest, positioning them for the phones still recording. I turned and walked toward the nearest exit, my vision blurring. Every step felt like moving through water. The conversations around me swelled into an indistinct roar. Sympathetic looks and barely concealed amusement tracked my path through the crowd. Even the security guard by the entrance wouldn't meet my eyes. They'd all known. This had been planned, coordinated, designed for maximum spectacle. The mall's exterior corridor hit me with air conditioning that raised goosebumps on my arms. I made it around a corner, away from the sapphire atrium's glass walls, before my legs gave out. A bench near a closed storefront offered shadows and temporary refuge. I sank onto it, my hands covering my face, the polished marble floor beneath my heels blurring as tears spilled over.
2 years of my life.
2 years of believing someone loved me, of planning a future with a man who just traded me in for someone wealthier, someone who fit his ambitions. And he'd done it in front of a crowd, turned my heartbreak into a public performance. Footsteps approached, quick, purposeful, but I couldn't make myself care. Let them see. Let them take more pictures. Nothing could make this worse. Miss Morgan. The voice was deep, controlled, and completely unfamiliar. I looked up through the blur of tears. A man stood 3 feet away, backlit by the mall's ambient lighting. Tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair slicked back, a well-groomed beard, and a face composed of sharp angles and absolute confidence. He wore a tailored dark suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, the kind of clothing that announced wealth and power without needing to say a word. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark and intense, fixed on me with a focus that felt almost invasive, like he was reading something in my face I hadn't meant to reveal. I don't need help, I said, wiping at my face with the back of my hand. I disagree. He took a step closer, his movements economical and deliberate. There are people with phones coming this way. In approximately 30 seconds, They'll find you sitting here in tears, and tomorrow morning, those photos will be everywhere." As if summoned by his words, voices echoed from the direction of the sapphire atrium. Young voices, excited and opportunistic. "Did you see her face?" "I got the whole thing." The stranger extended his hand. "My car is waiting at the north entrance. Unless you'd prefer to give them the sequel they're hoping for." I stared at his hand. Strong fingers, a platinum watch glinting at his wrist, a small scar across one knuckle. Absolutely no reason to trust him. But the voices were getting closer, and the thought of more photos, more humiliation, more proof of my public rejection. I grabbed his hand and let him pull me to my feet. His grip was steady, warm. He didn't let go immediately, instead guiding me quickly through the corridor toward an exit I rarely used. A black car idled at the curb outside, sleek, expensive, tinted windows. He opened the rear door with practiced ease and I slid inside, still clutching my purse. He followed, settling beside me with the kind of grace that suggested he was used to luxury vehicles. The door closed with a solid thunk, sealing us in leather-scented silence. "Drive," he said quietly to someone I hadn't noticed in the front seat. The car pulled away from the curb just as 3 people with phones burst through the exit behind us. I pressed against the far door, heart hammering against my ribs, reality catching up with my panic. "Who are you?" He turned those dark eyes on me, and something in his expression made my throat tight. Not threat exactly, but not safety either. Something more complex. More dangerous. "Someone who just witnessed your very public humiliation," he said quietly, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't quite place. "And someone who might have a solution to your problem." The car's interior smelled like leather and something else. Something expensive. Cologne, maybe, or just the scent of money. I hugged my purse to my chest, suddenly aware of how completely I'd abandoned common sense. Getting into a stranger's car because people were taking pictures. Brilliant survival instinct, Tessa. "You can drop me at the nearest bus stop," I said, trying to sound like I regularly fled shopping malls in luxury cars with mysterious men. "I could." He shifted slightly to face me, and the passing streetlights illuminated his features in fragments. Sharp jawline, watchful eyes, a slight curve to his mouth that wasn't quite a smile. "Or you could listen to my proposal first. I don't need rescuing by some stranger with a hero complex." "I don't have a hero complex, Miss Morgan." His voice held something darker now, something that made my pulse quicken for entirely different reasons than fear. "I have a business proposition. One that requires someone in precisely your position." "My position?" I laughed, and it came out sharp and bitter. "You mean publicly humiliated and probably about to lose my job when this video goes viral?" "Not about to lose your job. You'll keep it." He pulled out his phone, tapped it twice, then turned the screen toward me. "But yes, the video is already spreading." I stared at the screen. My own face looked back at me, frozen in the moment Marcus handed back his grandmother's ring. The caption read, "Gold digger waitress gets dumped for Forbes 30 under 30. 23,000 views in 18 minutes. My stomach dropped. "What do you want?" I whispered. The moment Marcus said my name in that tone, the one he reserved for explaining things to slow customers or correcting waitstaff, I felt my spine curve inward, shoulders rounding like I could fold myself small enough to disappear. But there was nowhere to hide in the center of the sapphire atrium, not with what looked like 100 phones already pointed at us, their lenses glinting under the crystal chandelier like predatory eyes. "The thing is, Tessa," Marcus began, his voice pitched to carry across the marble expanse, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about where my life is going. About the kind of partner I need to get there." I shifted my weight, suddenly hyper-aware of my modest peach satin blouse tucked into black trousers that had seemed professional this morning, but now felt painfully cheap under the atrium's unforgiving lighting. My work heels, the comfortable ones I could stand in for double shifts, clicked nervously against the marble. "Marcus, what's this about?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out thin, already defeated. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured broadly at the growing crowd, performing for an audience I was just now realizing had been summoned here deliberately. "I'm building something. A real career. Real connections. And I need someone who understands that world. Someone who was born into it, not someone trying to climb up from." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over me with calculated disdain. "From the service industry." The way he said service industry made it sound like a disease. Someone in the crowd snickered. The sound multiplied, spreading like a spark catching kindling. "You brought me here to insult me?" My hands were shaking. I clasped them together, trying to hide it. "I brought you here to be honest," Marcus corrected, his tone dripping with false reasonableness. "Tessa, you're comfortable. Safe. But comfortable is boring. Safe is stagnant." He turned slightly, and that's when I saw her stepping forward from the edge of the crowd. Vanessa Chun, my best friend, or who I'd thought was my best friend until this moment. She wore a cream designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her platinum blonde hair styled in perfect waves, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Hey, Tess," she said softly, like we were having coffee instead of participating in my public execution. "Vanessa?" My voice cracked on her name. "What are you?" "Vanessa understands my world," Marcus interrupted, reaching for her hand with casual intimacy that made my stomach lurch. "She's ambitious. Cultured. She's been to Monaco, Paris, Singapore. She speaks 3 languages. She challenges me intellectually." He paused, making sure the crowd and I caught every word. "She's the kind of woman who elevates a man instead of dragging him down." The marble floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Dragging you down? Be honest with yourself, Tessa. When was the last time you suggested we do something that didn't involve staying home because you couldn't afford it? When did you last wear something that didn't come from a clearance rack?" His eyes raked over my carefully chosen outfit with open contempt. "You work at Antonio's family restaurant. You smell like fried food half the time. I'm trying to network with venture capitalists and hedge fund managers, and you're asking if we can split an appetizer to save money." The crowd was eating this up. I could see it in their faces, the hungry excitement, the barely concealed glee. Phones were raised higher now, recording every angle, every expression of my disintegration. This wasn't just a breakup. This was entertainment. Content. My humiliation was going to be someone's viral TikTok, shared and reshared until everyone in the city knew about the poor waitress who deluded herself into thinking she could keep a man above her station. "Marcus, please." I hated how small my voice sounded, how it pleaded without me meaning to. "You're boring, Tessa." He said it like he was ordering coffee. Simple. Final. You've never been anywhere. You've never done anything interesting. You're just there, in the background, like wallpaper. Vanessa stepped closer, linking her arm through Marcus's with possessive ease. Her expression was all false sympathy, the kind I'd seen wealthy customers use when they'd explain why they couldn't tip well. "You understand, don't you? It's not personal, sweetie. Some people are just meant for different levels." Her gaze traveled over my blouse, my trousers, my shoes, cataloging every way I didn't measure up. "You're sweet. You really are. But Marcus needs someone who can actually keep up with him. Someone from his world." From his world. As if he hadn't grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, as if his mother wasn't a school teacher and his father hadn't driven a taxi. But he'd gotten his finance job, started making real money, and suddenly his past was something to erase.
Starting with me.
I wanted to scream, to tell them both exactly what I thought of their cruelty, their calculated performance, their complete lack of basic human decency.
But my body betrayed me.
My hands lifted automatically to cover my mouth, trying to contain the sob building in my chest. My posture bent forward, shoulders curving in, making myself smaller and smaller as laughter rippled through the crowd like a wave. I was disappearing, folding in on myself. Exactly what I'd always done when confronted with conflict or attention. "I'm going to need the ring back," Marcus said, holding out his hand expectantly. My fingers moved to the simple band on my left hand, his grandmother's ring, the one he'd proposed with 2 years ago over takeout Chinese food in my apartment. It had meant something then. Or I'd thought it had. I twisted it off with shaking hands and dropped it into his palm without looking at him. Marcus caught it smoothly, then held it up for the crowd to see like a trophy. "Fresh start," he announced. Then, while I stood there struggling to breathe, he turned to Vanessa and dropped to one knee with practiced, theatrical grace. The crowd erupted. Applause. Excited shouts. Someone whistled. Phones pressed closer, capturing every angle of Vanessa's delighted surprise, her hands flying to her face in perfect imitation of genuine shock. The way she said yes, loud enough for the back row to hear. And I stood there, frozen 3 feet away, bent and breaking, hands still covering my mouth to hold and the sounds trying to escape. I couldn't move.
Couldn't speak.
Could only stand there while my ex-fiancé proposed to my ex-best friend in the exact spot where he'd just systematically destroyed me, while 100 strangers documented my complete annihilation for their entertainment. Someone bumped into me, trying to get a better angle for their video. I stumbled, caught myself, and finally, my legs remembered how to move. I walked. Not toward any exit in particular, just away. Away from Marcus and Vanessa and their perfect moment. Away from the crowd and their phones and their laughter. My vision blurred. The sounds around me became muffled, distant, like I was underwater. I made it around a corner, past the boutiques and their glittering windows, until I found a bench near a closed storefront. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto it, my carefully maintained composure shattering like glass. I don't know how long I sat there, hands covering my face, trying to breathe through the humiliation. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the tears to dry into sticky tracks on my cheeks. Long enough to hear footsteps approaching, multiple sets, and voices I recognized from the crowd. "Is that her? Get a picture. Miss Morgan." The voice cut through the noise like a blade, deep and commanding enough to silence the approaching spectators mid-sentence. "There you are." I looked up through blurred vision, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. A man stood 3 feet away, and he didn't belong in this mall any more than a lion belonged in a petting zoo. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair slicked back with precision and a well-groomed beard that framed a face composed of sharp angles and absolute authority. His tailored dark suit probably cost more than my car, fitted perfectly to broad shoulders and a frame that suggested discipline and power held in careful check. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. Dark, intense, and fixed on me like I was the only person in the entire atrium. He moved toward me with economical grace, and the small crowd that had been closing and scattered like birds before a predator. He didn't acknowledge them, didn't even glance in their direction. His entire focus remained locked on me as he closed the distance and dropped smoothly to one knee. The position, the same one Marcus had just taken for Vanessa, should have made me flinch. Instead, I froze, confused and disoriented. "I told you to wait for me, amore." His voice carried, rich with an accent I couldn't place, Italian, maybe, or something close. He reached into his jacket and produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the chandelier light and threw it back in brilliant, blinding fragments. The diamond was massive, easily 3 carats, set in platinum with smaller stones circling the band. I couldn't form words. Couldn't process what was happening. I know I'm late. He took my left hand, his touch warm and steady, completely at odds with the trembling in my fingers. But I'm here now, and I'm not letting you go again. Behind us, I heard gasps, whispers exploding into excited chatter, phones swiveling away from Marcus and Vanessa, redirecting toward us like heat-seeking missiles. Who is that? Oh my God, is that Dominic Hale? The Dominic Hale? The stranger, Dominic, slid the ring onto my finger with practiced ease. It was heavy, substantial, real. Then he stood, bringing me up with him, his hand moving to the small of my back with possessive certainty. Wait, I managed, but he was already guiding me through the crowd that parted before him like water. I caught a glimpse of Marcus's face as we passed. His expression had gone from smug satisfaction to complete shock, mouth hanging open like a landed fish. Vanessa stood frozen beside him, her own engagement moment completely forgotten as every phone in the atrium tracked our movement. "Who are you?" I whispered, stumbling in my heels as he moved us toward the exit. "Someone who just made you the most talked-about woman in this city," he murmured back, his hand steady against my back. "Try to look happy about it." A sleek black car idled at the north entrance, as if it had been waiting. As if this entire thing had been choreographed. A driver in a dark suit opened the rear door without being asked, his face professionally blank. Dominic handed me into the car with a kind of old-world courtesy that should have felt ridiculous, but somehow didn't. The leather seat was soft, the interior smelling of expensive cologne and power. He slid in beside me, and the door closed with a solid, final thunk. "Drive," he said quietly. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the crowd, the cameras, and Marcus's stunned face. I stared down at the ring on my finger, this impossible, beautiful, completely inexplicable ring, and then at the man beside me who'd just upended my entire world for the second time in 1 hour. What just happened? My voice came out small and bewildered. Dominic settled back against the seat, his dark eyes meeting mine with something that might have been amusement. "I just became your fiancé, Miss Morgan." He paused, letting that sink in. "At least, that's what everyone in that mall believes. Now we need to discuss whether you'd like to keep it that way." The city slid past the tinted windows in a blur of lights and motion, but inside the car, everything felt suspended. Frozen. I stared at the ring on my finger, this massive, impossible diamond that caught the passing streetlights and threw them back like captured stars. "You're insane," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You don't even know me, Dominic Hale." He extended his hand as if we were meeting at a business lunch instead of fleeing a mall after a fake proposal. "And you're Tessa Morgan, 27, waitress at Antonio's family restaurant in Brooklyn. You work doubles on Thursdays and Fridays, you take the 6 train to work, and until approximately 45 minutes ago, you were engaged to Marcus Chen, financial analyst at Rothman and Associates." My blood went cold. "How do you know all that?" "I make it my business to know things." He withdrew his hand when I didn't take it, unbothered by the rejection. "I've been watching you for 3 weeks, Miss Morgan. Ever since you served me lunch at Antonio's and didn't recognize me." "Should I have recognized you?" I pressed myself against the car door, suddenly aware of how trapped I was. "Most people do. Dominic Hale, CEO of Hale Ventures. We invest in commercial real estate, tech startups, high-end hospitality." He said it casually, but I caught the weight beneath the words. The things he wasn't saying. The legitimate side of my business portfolio, at least. The legitimate side, I repeated slowly. And the illegitimate side? Let's just say I have diverse interests. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. But that's precisely why I need you. I should have demanded he let me out. Should have opened the door and rolled onto the street if necessary. Instead, I heard myself ask, why me? Because 3 weeks ago, you served me pasta primavera and never once looked at me the way everyone else does. No fear. No calculation. No attempt to gain my favor. He shifted to face me more directly. You asked if I needed more water, told me the bread was fresh, and went back to checking on your other tables. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I was working, I said weakly.
Exactly.
You were focused on doing your job well, not on who I was or what I could do for you. His gaze intensified. I've been looking for someone like you, Miss Morgan. Someone genuine. Someone who doesn't belong to my world and therefore can't be corrupted by it. For what? To be my wife. He said it like he was ordering coffee. Simple.
Direct.
Temporarily, at least. Let me explain before you open that door. My hand had indeed moved to the handle. I froze, waiting. My business requires certain appearances to be maintained. There's a commission, a group of very traditional, very old-fashioned men who control significant territory and resources in this city. He paused, choosing his words carefully. They don't trust unmarried men. They see us as unstable, unpredictable, dangerous. You are dangerous, I pointed out.
Yes.
But I need them to believe I'm domesticated dangerous. Settled. Someone who has something to lose and therefore won't take unnecessary risks. He gestured to the ring on my finger. A wife provides that appearance. Especially a wife like you. Like me, I echoed flatly. Kind. Modest. Someone who works an honest job and doesn't have political aspirations or social climbing tendencies. His voice softened slightly. Someone who looked utterly devastated when that man humiliated you, but didn't scream or throw things or make it worse. You have dignity, Miss Morgan. Real dignity. Not the performed kind. I didn't know whether to be flattered or insulted. So you want to rent me? Like a prop. I want to offer you a contract. He pulled a folder from the seat pocket in front of him, opening it to reveal dense pages of legal text. 1 year. You live in my home, appear at my side for important events, play the role of devoted fiancé and then wife. In exchange, you receive a signing bonus of $50,000, a monthly stipend of $10,000, full security detail, and at the end of the year, a settlement of $500,000. The numbers didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. That's more than fair compensation for your time and the disruption to your life, he finished. Additionally, any debts you currently carry will be cleared immediately. Student loans, credit cards, medical bills. Whatever you need. I thought of my apartment, Marcus's apartment, technically, the lease in his name, because my credit hadn't been good enough. The eviction notice I'd found taped to the door last week, Marcus's revenge for some argument I couldn't even remember now. The text from my landlord this morning confirming I had until Friday to vacate. I'm being evicted, I heard myself say. Marcus stopped paying rent 2 months ago. I didn't know until the notice came. Something dark flickered across Dominic's face. Then you have nowhere to go. I was going to ask if I could crash with Vanessa. The laugh that escaped me was bitter and sharp. Guess that's not an option anymore. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. He leaned forward slightly, his intensity focused and unwavering. But I am. Sign this contract, Miss Morgan, and you'll never have to worry about rent again. You'll never have to smile through another customer calling you sweetheart while they tip you $2 on a $50 check. You'll never have to choose between buying groceries and making your electric payment. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because I need you to be a stranger, he said simply. Everyone else in my life wants something from me, or fears me, or is trying to use me. You're the first person I've met in years who just wanted to make sure I had enough water with my meal.
He held out a pen.
I'm not offering you a fairy tale, Miss Morgan. I'm offering you a business arrangement. 1 year of your life in exchange for financial security and freedom from men like Marcus Chen. The pen gleamed between us like a challenge, like a lifeline. I thought of Marcus's face in the mall, the way he'd called me boring and poor like they were character flaws instead of circumstances. I thought of Vanessa's pitying smile, the crowd's laughter, the videos that were probably already going viral. I thought of my empty apartment, Marcus's apartment, and the uncertain future stretching ahead. And I thought of the weight of the ring on my finger, the way Dominic had looked at me like I mattered, like I was valuable, even kneeling in front of 100 cameras. 1 year, I said slowly. 1 year, he confirmed. I took the pen. My hand shook as I signed my name on the line he indicated, but the letters came out clear and decisive. Tessa Morgan, agreeing to become someone else entirely. Dominic countersigned below my signature, then closed the folder with a decisive snap. Welcome to your new life, amore. His smile was sharp and satisfied. First order of business. We're going to make sure that video of me proposing trends higher than anything Marcus posted. By tomorrow morning, you're going to be the most envied woman in New York. I stared at the ring, at the contract, at the man beside me who just bought a year of my life with promises of protection and revenge. What have I done? I whispered. Something brave, Dominic said quietly. Or something desperate. Time will tell which. The estate sat behind iron gates in a part of Connecticut I'd only seen in magazines, all stone and glass and manicured lawns that stretched into darkness. The car wound up a private drive lined with trees, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out the stars. When the house finally came into view, I had to swallow hard against the lump forming in my throat. It wasn't a house. It was a monument to wealth I couldn't begin to comprehend. Home sweet home, Dominic said, and I couldn't tell if he was being ironic. A woman waited at the front entrance, older, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and an expression that managed to be both warm and assessing. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes, the uniform of someone who worked for a living but took pride in it. Miss Morgan, this is Elena. She manages the household staff. Dominic's hand returned to the small of my back as he guided me up the steps. Elena, this is Tessa. She'll be staying in the East Wing. Welcome, Miss Morgan. Elena's accent was faint, Eastern European, maybe Russian. Her eyes swept over my wrinkled peach blouse and work heels without judgment. I've prepared the primary suite for you. Would you like to freshen up before dinner? Yes. Thank you. I heard myself slipping into my customer service voice, the one I used at the restaurant. Polite, deferential, apologetic for existing. Elena's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Come. I'll show you. The East Wing turned out to be larger than my entire apartment had been. The primary suite featured a bedroom with ceilings so high they made me dizzy, a bathroom with marble everything, and a walk-in closet the size of Antonio's kitchen. Someone had already unpacked clothes I didn't own, designer dresses, casual wear that still had price tags, shoes arranged by color and heel height. Mr. Hale had his stylist prepare a wardrobe based on your measurements, Elena explained, seeing my expression. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, simply let me know. I touched a silk blouse, felt the weight of fabric that cost more than a week's wages. This is too much. Mr. Hale doesn't do things by half measures. Elena moved to the windows, drawing curtains I hadn't noticed. Dinner is at 8. Casual tonight, just family staff. Marco will be cooking. He's been with the family for 20 years, very particular about his kitchen. Family staff, I repeated. The words felt strange in my mouth. There are 12 of us who live on the property. Gardeners, security, housekeepers. We take care of things. She paused at the door, her gaze direct. You worked in service, yes? At a restaurant. How did you? I can tell. A small smile crossed her face. The way you thanked me. The way you're standing in this room, like you're afraid to touch anything. We're not so different, you and I. We both know what it means to work for what we have. After she left, I sank onto the bed, a massive four-poster thing with sheets that probably cost more than my security deposit, and tried to process the last 4 hours of my life. This morning, I'd been Tessa Morgan, waitress, engaged to Marcus, worried about making rent. Now I was Tessa Morgan, fake fiancé to a man who may or may not be in the Mafia, wearing a ring worth more than a car, sitting in a bedroom that could house a family. Dinner turned out to be in the kitchen, not the formal dining room I'd glimpsed on the way in. The staff gathered around a large wooden table, Elena, Marco the chef, Rosa and Marie who handled housekeeping, 3 security guards whose names I immediately forgot, and 2 younger women who worked in the gardens. Dominic sat at the head, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him. Tessa used to work at Antonio's in Brooklyn, he announced as I took the empty seat beside him. She knows good food when she tastes it, Marco. So don't embarrass yourself. Marco, a broad man with flour still dusting his forearms, grinned.
A challenge.
I like her already. They treated me like one of them. Asked about my favorite dishes to make, traded stories about difficult customers, laughed when I demonstrated the face I made when someone asked if the pasta was gluten-free at an Italian restaurant. For the first time since the mall, I felt like I could breathe. You're good with them, Dominic murmured later, after most of the staff had drifted away to their evening routines. Natural. They're good people, I said simply. They work hard. I understand that. Most women in your position would demand to eat in the dining room, would refuse to socialize with the help. His dark eyes studied me. You're not like most women, are you? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something dangerous flickered across his face. We have a problem. The problem arrived the next afternoon in the form of 6 women in designer labels and judgment. Dominic's business associates' wives, Elena had warned me, here for tea and to inspect the new fiancé. They arranged themselves in the formal sitting room like a panel of executioners, and I felt every dollar of the class difference between us. So you're a waitress, one of them said, Catherine something, dripping in Cartier. How quaint. I was a waitress, I corrected quietly. Now I'm Dominic's future wife, Dominic finished, appearing in the doorway with a timing that felt deliberate. He crossed to me, his hand possessive on my shoulder. And I'd appreciate it if you'd show her the respect that position deserves, Catherine. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. We were just getting to know her, another woman protested. Surely you can't expect us not to be curious about where she came from. I expect you to remember that Tessa is under my protection now. His voice was silk over steel. Any disrespect shown to her is disrespect shown to me. I trust I'm being clear. The women exchanged glances, recalibrating. Catherine forced a smile. Of course. We meant no offense. After they left, earlier than planned, making excuses about other appointments, I turned to Dominic. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he said simply. I did. His hand moved from my shoulder to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheek in a gesture that felt too intimate for our contract. You're mine now, Tessa. Even if it's just on paper. And I protect what's mine. The words should have felt possessive, controlling. Instead, they wrapped around me like armor. For the first time since Marcus had called me boring, I felt like maybe I was worth protecting after all. That night, Elena found me in the kitchen, unable to sleep, making tea. She joined me at the counter. Two women who understood what it meant to serve, sitting in comfortable silence. He's never brought anyone here before, she said finally. Never let anyone into the family space. It's just business, I said automatically. Elena's knowing smile suggested she didn't believe me any more than I believed myself. The dining room had been transformed. Crystal gleamed under the chandelier's light, china arranged with military precision, flowers I couldn't name spilling from centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly salary used to be. Elena supervised the final touches while I watched from the doorway, fighting the urge to straighten a fork that sat 1 millimeter out of alignment. You should be getting ready, Dominic said behind me. He'd appeared silently, already dressed in a dark suit that made him look even more dangerous than usual. Our guests arrive in an hour. Who are they? I'd asked twice already, but he'd been evasive both times. Business associates. The Viti family. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Luca Viti and I have a complicated history. This dinner is about maintaining civil relations. Civil relations. I turned to face him. That sounds tense. It will be. He studied my face, something calculating in his expression. You don't have to attend if you're not comfortable. I can make excuses. I want to help. The words surprised us both. I'm supposed to be your fiancé, right? I should be there. Tessa. I've served hundreds of dinners, Dominic. I know how to read a room, how to keep things moving, how to make people comfortable. I lifted my chin. Let me do what I'm good at. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or a reassessment. All right, but stay close to me. And if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Understood. I nodded, already cataloging the table in my mind, running through the kind of service flow that had become second nature after years at Antonio's. The dress Elena had selected was emerald green silk, elegant without being ostentatious, and it fit like it had been made for me. Probably had been. I descended the stairs an hour later to find Dominic waiting in the foyer, his expression unreadable as I approached. You look beautiful, he said quietly, offering his arm. I look expensive, I corrected. There's a difference. His mouth quirked. Both can be true. The Viti family arrived in a convoy of black cars, all chrome and tinted windows, and the kind of aggressive wealth that announced itself before you even saw it. Luca Viti emerged first, mid-40s, silver at his temples, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His wife Gabriella followed, dripping in diamonds, her gaze sweeping over me with cold assessment. Behind them came 3 men in suits, bodyguards trying to look like legitimate business associates. Dominic. Luca's handshake was too firm, too long. Thank you for having us. Luca. Gabriella. Dominic's hand found the small of my back. This is my fiancée, Tessa Morgan, the famous waitress. Gabriella's smile was sharp. We saw the video. Very romantic. Very public, Luca added. Bold move, proposing in a mall. Not your usual style. Love makes fools of us all, Dominic said smoothly, but I felt the tension in his fingers against my spine. Dinner began civilly enough. Marco had outdone himself. Courses that arrived with perfect timing, wines paired with precision. I played hostess, ensuring glasses stayed filled, conversation flowed, watching the dynamics like I'd watched tables at the restaurant. Luca and Dominic traded pleasantries that felt like chess moves, each sentence layered with meaning I couldn't quite parse. But I could read the bodyguard. The one standing behind Luca's chair, supposedly just there for show. He was young, maybe 25, and he couldn't stop moving. His weight shifted foot to foot. His jaw clenched and unclenched. And every few minutes, he checked his watch. Quick, furtive glances he tried to hide. I'd seen that behavior before. The nervous customer who couldn't sit still, who kept checking the time, who was clearly waiting for something. Usually it meant they were meeting someone. Sometimes it meant they were planning to dine and dash. Sometimes it meant trouble. The bodyguard checked his watch again. His hand moved to his collar, tugging like it was too tight. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple despite the room's comfortable temperature. More wine. I stood, reaching for the bottle before Elena could move from her position by the sideboard. "I'll get it, Miss Morgan," she started, but I was already rounding the table. The bodyguard checked his watch again. His hand moved toward his jacket, just slightly, just enough. I stumbled. The wine bottle flew from my hands in a perfect arc, burgundy liquid splashing across the bodyguard's chest, his face, his carefully positioned jacket. He jerked backward with a shout, hands flying up, and something clattered to the floor. A phone, screen lit up with a timer counting down. 15 seconds. Dominic moved before I could process what was happening. He was out of his chair and on the bodyguard in 2 strides, slamming him against the wall with economical violence. The other bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Dominic's security had already materialized from the shadows, guns drawn, the air suddenly thick with the promise of bloodshed. "What is this, Luca?" Dominic's voice was deadly calm. "A timer? Were you planning something for dessert?" Luca's face had gone pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your man has a phone counting down to something." Dominic twisted the bodyguard's arm, professional and brutal. "And my fiancé just saved us all from finding out what." He glanced at me, something fierce and proud blazing in his dark eyes. "Good instincts, amore." The phone on the floor hit 0. Nothing happened. But outside, through the dining room windows, I saw headlights, multiple cars, pulling up the drive in formation. "An ambush," Dominic said softly. "You were keeping me occupied while your men moved into position." He released the bodyguard, letting him crumple to the floor. "Disappointing, Luca. I thought we had an understanding." "We do," Luca started, but Dominic raised a hand. "We did." Past tense. He moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and protective. "Get out of my house. And tell whoever's in those cars to turn around, or this gets very ugly very quickly." The VDs left.
Quickly.
Quietly, with none of the swagger they'd arrived with. When the doors closed behind them, Dominic turned to me. His hands cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "How did you know?" He kept checking his watch. Sweating. Couldn't stand still. I was shaking now, adrenaline catching up with me. "I've seen 1,000 nervous customers." He had all the tells. "You saved my life." He said it with something like wonder. "You weren't supposed to be a partner. You were supposed to be window dressing, and you just saved my life." "I spilled wine," I said weakly. "That's all." "You saw what trained security guards missed." What I missed. His thumbs brushed my cheeks, the gesture intimate and grounding. "You're not a prop, Tessa. You're—" He didn't finish. Just pulled me into his chest, his arms wrapping around me like he could shield me from the violence that had almost erupted in his dining room. And I let him. Let myself be held by this dangerous man who'd bought a year of my life and was looking at me now like I was worth infinitely more than whatever price he'd paid. "That was stupid," I whispered against his shoulder. "I could have gotten hurt, but you didn't." His voice was fierce against my hair. And from now on, you're at every meeting, every dinner, every negotiation. I want your eyes on every room I walk into. That's not in the contract. Forget the contract. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. You're my partner now, Tessa, whether you plan to be or not. 3 days after the VD dinner, Dominic took me into the city. Business, he'd said, meetings with contractors for a new property development. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that required security beyond the driver and the single bodyguard in the front seat. I should have known better. We were stopped at a light in Lower Manhattan when the black SUV pulled alongside us. I noticed at first the way it matched our speed too precisely, the tinted windows that reflected nothing back. My waitress instincts kicked in again, that sixth sense that told me when something was about to go wrong. Dominic. The window rolled down. I saw the gun barrel before I understood what I was seeing. Dominic's body slammed into mine, forcing me down beneath the dashboard as the world exploded into noise. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. The air filled with the sharp crack of gunfire and the acrid smell of cordite. Dominic's weight pressed me into the leather seat, his arms wrapped around my head, his body a shield between me and the bullets tearing through the car. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Felt like hours. Then our driver was accelerating, tires squealing, the car fishtailing as he wove through traffic. More shots followed us, pinging off metal, but growing distant. The bodyguard in the front seat was on the phone, barking locations and coordinates in terse, professional bursts. Are you hurt? Dominic's voice was tight, controlled, but I heard the fear beneath it.
No.
No, I'm fine. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Are you? He sat up and I saw the blood. Dark red spreading across his white shirt, just below his shoulder. Not arterial, not immediately life-threatening, but enough to make my stomach lurch. You're shot. My voice came out high and thin. Oh God, you're shot. Grazed. He pressed his hand to the wound, his jaw tight. I've had worse. He leaned forward to the driver. The Brooklyn safe house.
Now.
The safe house turned out to be a nondescript brownstone in Park Slope, the kind of building you'd walk past 1,000 times without noticing. The driver pulled into an underground garage, and suddenly we were surrounded by armed men who appeared from nowhere, checking perimeters, securing exits, moving with military precision. Dominic guided me inside with his good arm, up narrow stairs to a second-floor apartment that looked lived in despite clearly being a refuge. Someone had stocked it recently. There was food in the kitchen, clean clothes in the bedroom, medical supplies in the bathroom cabinet. Sit, I ordered, pushing him toward the bed. Let me see it, Tessa. Don't argue with me right now. My hands were still shaking, but my voice had steadied. I've patched up kitchen burns and knife cuts at the restaurant. I can handle this. He sat. Let me peel away his jacket, his ruined shirt, exposing the wound. It was a graze, like he'd said. The bullet had carved a furrow across his shoulder, but hadn't embedded. Still, it was deep, bleeding steadily, the kind of injury that needed attention. I found gauze, antiseptic, surgical tape. Forced my hands to stop trembling as I cleaned the wound. Dominic watched me work, his dark eyes never leaving my face. You saved my life again, he said quietly. You saw that car before I did, and you took bullets for me. I pressed gauze to the wound, maybe harder than necessary. You could have been killed. Better me than you. Don't say that. The words came out sharper than I intended. Don't act like your life matters less than mine. It does. His good hand caught mine, stilling my movements. Tessa, look at me.
I did.
His face was inches from mine, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the thin scar through his eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched against pain he wouldn't acknowledge. "I've done terrible things," he said quietly. "I've hurt people, killed people. I'm not a good man, no matter what contract we signed or what ring you're wearing. But you," his thumb traced the back of my hand, "you're good.
Kind.
You see people. You notice when they're nervous or hurting or about to do something stupid. The world needs people like you. The world needs people like you too." I resumed wrapping the wound, needing something to do with my hands. People who protect what they care about. People who keep their word. "Is that what you think I am?" "I think you're more than you pretend to be." I secured the bandage with surgical tape, my fingers lingering on his skin longer than necessary. "I think you're dangerous and ruthless and probably half the things people whisper about you. But I also think you eat dinner with your staff because you value them. And you defended me against people who looked down on me. And you just took bullets meant for someone you hired for appearances." "It's not appearances anymore." His voice was rough, raw. "It hasn't been since you spilled that wine. Maybe not since I saw you in that mall, refusing to make a scene even while your heart was breaking." My breath caught. "Dominic. This feels real, Tessa." His good hand moved to cup my face, the gesture achingly familiar now. "This thing between us. It's not supposed to, but it does." "We signed a contract," I whispered, but I was leaning into his touch, my body betraying what my words tried to deny. "Forget the contract." He echoed his words from 3 days ago, but this time they carried different weight. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this." I should have pulled away. Should have reminded us both that this was business, that in less than a year I'd take my settlement and walk away, that falling for him was the stupidest thing I could possibly do. Instead, I kissed him. Or he kissed me. Later, I wouldn't be able to say who moved first, only that suddenly his mouth was on mine and nothing else existed except this, his hand tangling in my hair, my fingers pressed against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath, the taste of him overwhelming and right and terrifying. The kiss was desperate, fueled by adrenaline and fear, and the kind of want that had been building since he knelt before me in that mall. He kissed me like I was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. I kissed him back, like I could somehow absorb his wounds, take his pain, make him understand that he was worth protecting too. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This changes everything," he murmured. "I know." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that truth settle over us. "What do we do right now?" His thumb traced my bottom lip, the gesture possessive and tender. "Right now, we survive. We figure out who's trying to kill me, and we end them." And then he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "Then we figure out what this is, what we are." "Partners," I said softly, using his word from before. "More than that." He kissed me again, softer this time, but no less intense. "You're mine, Tessa. Contract or no contract. And I'm keeping you." The word should have scared me. Should have sent me running back to my safe, predictable life where the biggest danger was a rude customer and the worst pain was a missed tip. Instead, they felt like coming home. "Okay," I whispered against his mouth. "Keep me." And when he pulled me closer, careful of his injured shoulder, I let him. Let myself fall into this dangerous, impossible thing that was supposed to be pretend, but had somehow become the most real thing in my life. We stayed in the safe house for 2 days. Dominic made calls from burner phones, his security team rotating shifts outside, the windows covered with blackout curtains that turned day into perpetual twilight. I learned what it meant to live in his world, the constant vigilance, the way he checked sight lines instinctively, the gun he kept within arm's reach even while sleeping. I also learned how he kissed me in the morning, sleep rough and unhurried. How he watched me move through the small kitchen like I was something precious he was afraid might disappear. How he said my name in the dark, like a prayer or a confession. On the third morning, his phone rang. Not one of the burners, his actual phone, the one he'd turned off since the shooting. He stared at the screen, his expression darkening. "What is it?" I asked from the kitchen counter where I'd been attempting to make coffee with unfamiliar equipment. Someone accessed my calendar. His voice was flat, controlled in the way that meant he was furious. The meeting we were driving to when we got hit. Only 4 people knew about it: my assistant, my driver, my head of security, and me. A leak. A leak. He made another call, speaking in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow. When he hung up, his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "My security team is running traces now. Whoever it is, they've been careful, but not careful enough." I set down the coffee I'd been pouring, my hands suddenly unsteady. "How long?" "That's what we're going to find out." He crossed to me, his hands settling on my waist like he needed to ground himself. "Tessa, I need you to think. Has anyone contacted you since the mall? Anyone from your old life trying to reach out?"
No.
"I mean, I got some messages on social media after the video went viral, but I didn't respond to any of them." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the notifications I'd been ignoring. Hundreds of comments, friend requests, messages from strangers wanting to know the story. Wait, one message, buried in the flood.
From an account I recognized.
Marcus. My stomach dropped. Oh God. Dominic took the phone from my numb fingers, his expression deadly calm as he read. "When did this come through?" 4 days ago, right before the VD dinner. I felt sick. I didn't even see it. There were so many messages, The message was simple: "We need to talk. It's important. I made a mistake." Followed by a phone number I didn't recognize. "He's been trying to reach you." Dominic's voice was ice. "And when you didn't respond, he stopped, making another call." This conversation was shorter, sharper. When he hung up, something dangerous had settled over his features.
"Get dressed."
"We're leaving." "Where are we going?" "To have a conversation with your ex-fiancé." The address Dominic's team traced led us to a dingy apartment in Queens, the kind of building with broken buzzer buttons and the smell of garbage in the stairwell. Nothing like the luxury condo Marcus had lived in when we were together. The door to 3B was half open when we arrived, 2 of Dominic's security guards already inside. They'd found Marcus at his kitchen table, surrounded by empty bottles and what looked like surveillance photos.
Photos of me.
Coming out of the estate. Shopping with Elena. Having coffee with Dominic at a cafe I'd thought was private. Marcus looked up when we entered, and I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt and unshaven, his eyes bloodshot and wild. When he saw me, something desperate crossed his features.
"Tessa."
"Thank God. You have to help me." "Shut up." Dominic's voice cut through whatever Marcus had been about to say. He picked up one of the photos, me and Dominic at the cafe, his hand on my face, both of us laughing at something. "How long have you been following her?" "I wasn't. It's not what it looks like." "You've been stalking her." Dominic set the photo down with careful precision. "Taking pictures. Documenting her movements. And then what? Selling that information to the VD family?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. "Oh my God." I pressed a hand to my mouth, ball rising in my throat. "Marcus, what did you do?" "I didn't have a choice." He stood, swaying slightly. "Drunk or exhausted or both. I owed the money. Gambling debts. They said they'd kill me if I didn't pay, and I didn't have it. Then I saw the video of you with him." He gestured at Dominic with shaking hands. "And I knew. I knew the Vitti family would pay for information about Dominic Hale's movements, about his weaknesses. His weaknesses. I repeated hollowly. You mean me? You were supposed to be nothing. Marcus's voice rose, cracking. You were supposed to stay gone, stay irrelevant. But then you show up with him, wearing that ring, and suddenly you're everywhere. On every blog, every social media feed. The waitress who landed a billionaire. He laughed, the sound brittle and wrong. Do you know how that made me look? I dumped you for Vanessa, and a week later you're engaged to someone 100 times wealthier than her family. So you tried to get me killed. The words felt distant, like someone else was saying them. Because I embarrassed you. I didn't know they'd shoot at you. They said they just wanted to know his schedule, his routines. They said. He stopped, seeing something in Dominic's face that made him take a step back. Look, I can fix this. I can tell you everything I told them, every meeting, every location. Dominic moved so fast I almost didn't see it. One moment he was standing beside me, the next he had Marcus slammed against the wall, forearm pressed to his throat. You put her in danger. Dominic's voice was conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. You stalked her, photographed her, sold information that led to men firing automatic weapons at a car she was sitting in. His forearm pressed harder. Marcus made a choking sound. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now.
Dominic.
I touched his shoulder, feeling the tension coiled in his muscles. Don't. He doesn't deserve your mercy. I know. I did know. Marcus had betrayed me in ways I was still processing, had endangered my life for gambling debts and wounded pride. But I don't want you to have his blood on your hands because of me. Dominic held Marcus against the wall for another long moment, then released him with a shove that sent him stumbling. You're going to tell my people everything. Every conversation with the Vitti family. Every piece of information you sold. Every meeting, every contact, every single detail. He straightened his jacket with deliberate calm. And then you're going to disappear. Change your name. Leave the state. Because if I ever see you again, if you ever come near Tessa again, if you so much as think about her. He leaned in close. I will end you. Slowly. And no one will ever find what's left. Do you understand? Marcus nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face.
Yes.
Yes, I understand. In the car afterward, I couldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline, the fear, the betrayal, it all crashed over me at once. Dominic pulled me against his chest, his hand stroking my hair with surprising gentleness. He can't hurt you anymore, he murmured. I promise you, amore. He can't touch you. He was watching me. My voice broke. The whole time he was out there, watching, and I didn't know. You're safe now. I've got you. He tilted my face up, his dark eyes fierce. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happens to people who threaten what's mine. The Vitti family, Marcus, anyone else stupid enough to think they can use you to get to me. His thumb brushed away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. No one hurts you and walks away from it. No one. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Should have reminded me that Dominic was dangerous, violent, exactly the kind of man I should run from. Instead, wrapped in his arms while his security team dealt with my ex-fiancé's betrayal, I felt safer than I ever had in my life. The text came through at 11:47 p.m. while I was curled against Dominic's chest in his study, half asleep while he reviewed contracts. An unknown number. The words made my blood turn to ice. Your grandmother's house. The one on Morrison Street. I know you still have the key. Come alone in 30 minutes or I make a call to some very interested people. People who'd love to know where Dominic Hale sleeps at night. I must have gone rigid because Dominic's hand stilled on my shoulder. What is it? I showed him the phone. watched his jaw tighten as he read. Marcus. He's bluffing, Dominic said, already reaching for his own phone. He doesn't have access to. A photo came through. My grandmother standing in her kitchen, unaware, visible through her window. Taken tonight. The timestamp was 17 minutes ago. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. He's watching her. Dominic, if he hurts her. He won't. Dominic was already on his feet, moving toward the weapons cabinet he thought I didn't know about. We bring in the team. Lockdown protocol. I'll have men at her house in. Another text. I see the black SUV that just turned onto her street. Call them off or I disappear and she becomes collateral damage. TikTok, Tessa. 28 minutes. He's watching now, I whispered. He'll see anything you send. Dominic's expression turned lethal. Then I go with you. You think I'm stupid? You show up, everyone dies. Her first. Then I take my chances with VD's people. I've got nothing left to lose, Tessa. You took everything. I stood, my decision already made. I'm going. Absolutely not. Dominic moved between me and the door. This is exactly what he wants. He gets you isolated, uses you as leverage. He has my grandmother's address, Dominic. Your enemy's phone numbers. He's desperate, and he's got nothing left to lose, he said it himself. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, my mind already racing. If I don't go, people die. If you send your men, people die. This is the only option where maybe nobody dies. Tessa. I'm going. I met his eyes, letting him see that I meant it. With or without your help. Something flickered across his face. Fear, maybe. Respect. Then you're taking this. He pulled a small device from his desk drawer, no bigger than a button. Press the center when you get there. It'll give me your exact location. I took it, slipped it into my jacket pocket. But I needed more than location. I needed him to understand what was happening when he arrived. I moved to his desk, grabbed a pen, and scrawled on the corner of his contract. Morrison Street. Grandmother's house. Empty 2 years. Basement entrance sticks, use kitchen. Dominic pulled me against him, his hand cupping the back of my head. 30 minutes. If I don't hear from you, I'm coming anyway. 30 minutes, I agreed, and kissed him like it might be the last time. The house looked exactly as I remembered. Small brick exterior, my grandmother's garden now overgrown, windows dark. I'd kept it after she moved to assisted living. Couldn't bring myself to sell the place where I'd spent every summer of my childhood. Now that sentimentality was a weapon pointed at my throat. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first warning that nothing about this would go according to plan. Marcus. My voice echoed through the empty living room. Furniture draped in sheets, dust coating every surface. The smell of abandonment. Basement. His voice drifted up through the floorboards. Just like old times, right? You used to hide down there during thunderstorms. I'd told him that once, in bed, when we were still pretending we knew each other. The memory felt like it belonged to a different person. My hand found the tracking device in my pocket. I pressed it once, firm, then started down the basement stairs. Each step creaked under my weight, announcing my arrival. The single bulb at the bottom cast everything in harsh shadows. Marcus stood in the center of the concrete floor, and my stomach dropped. He looked nothing like the polished man who'd humiliated me at the mall. His suit was wrinkled, stained. His eyes were wild, unfocused. And his right hand held a gun that shook slightly as he pointed it toward me. "You came," he said, and he sounded genuinely surprised. I thought for sure the big bad Mafia Don would ignore my instructions. "You said you'd hurt my grandmother." I kept my voice steady, my hands visible. Every true crime show I'd ever watched said not to make sudden movements. I'm here. Now what?
Now.
He laughed, the sound scraping against my nerves. Now I finally get something from this disaster you've created. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? Vanessa left. Her father blacklisted me. I had to liquidate everything just to stay ahead of my debts, and it still wasn't enough. So you thought threatening me would fix it? I thought selling information about you to Luca Vitti would fix it. The gun wavered as he gestured wildly. But you and your boyfriend got to him first. Now I've got nothing. Except you. Marcus, you don't want to do this. I took a small step to the left, putting myself closer to the old furnace. Dominic will. Dominic will what? Kill me? Marcus's laugh turned bitter. I'm dead anyway. Vitti's people, loan sharks. Take your pick. At least this way I go out having destroyed the thing he actually cares about. The gun steadied, pointing directly at my chest. Everything slowed down. I heard my grandmother's voice in my memory. When you're scared, baby, you move. Don't freeze.
Move.
I grabbed the nearest object, my grandmother's old iron skillet, still hanging on its hook, and hurled it at the bulb overhead. Glass exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. Marcus's gun fired, deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet hit concrete somewhere to my right. I dropped, rolled behind the furnace, my heart slamming against my ribs, so hard I thought they might crack. You bitch. Marcus's voice, panicked now. Another shot. This one sparked off the furnace inches from my head. Then the basement door exploded inward. Not the kitchen entrance, the bulkhead doors I'd completely forgotten about. Dominic came through like violence personified, 3 of his men behind him, all armed. Red laser sights cut through the darkness, finding Marcus in seconds. Gun down. Dominic's voice carried absolute authority.
Now.
Marcus spun toward the stairs, and I saw his finger tighten on the trigger. Saw him aiming for Dominic. Dom. I lunged from behind the furnace, grabbed the old wooden crate my grandmother used for storage, and threw it. It hit Marcus's arm just as he fired. The shot went wide, punching through drywall. Dominic closed the distance in 3 strides. His hand caught Marcus's wrist, twisted. The gun clattered across concrete. Then Dominic's fist connected with Marcus's jaw with a crack that sounded final. Marcus went down hard, stayed down. 2 of Dominic's men had him secured in seconds, zip ties around his wrists, weapons trained on his prone form. The 3rd flipped on a flashlight, illuminating the destruction. Bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, the skillet I'd thrown lying in a pool of light. Then Dominic was in front of me, his hands on my face, tilting it up to the flashlight beam. Are you hit? Tessa, look at me. Are you hurt? I'm fine. My voice shook. I'm okay. He pulled me against him, and I felt the tremor run through his entire body. If you ever do anything like that again, he said into my hair, I will lock you in a tower and hire dragons. You found the note. I managed something close to a laugh. The kitchen entrance. I found the note. We came through the bulkhead because it was faster, and you said the kitchen entrance sticks. His arms tightened. 30 minutes, you said. It was 23. Behind us, Marcus groaned. Dominic released me, turned toward where his men held my ex-fiancé. His expression went cold, controlled. The man who'd held me seconds ago disappeared behind something darker. Take him to the warehouse, Dominic said quietly. I'll deal with him personally. Dom, I started. He looked back at me, and I saw it in his eyes. The choice. He'd let me make this call. I thought about the video. The humiliation. My grandmother's house turned into a crime scene. The gun pointed at Dominic's chest. Call the police, I said. Let them have him. He's not worth your hands getting dirty. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Pride, maybe. Or relief. He nodded to his men. You heard her. Anonymous tip. Let them find him with the gun and his debts. As they dragged Marcus up the stairs, he looked back at me one last time. You were supposed to be nothing, he said. Just a waitress. I am a waitress, I told him, my voice steady now, certain. And I'm worth 50 of you. His expression crumpled. Then he was gone, and it was just Dominic and me in my grandmother's basement, surrounded by the evidence of how close I'd come to losing everything. We should go, Dominic said softly, before the police arrive. I took his hand, let him lead me up the stairs and out into the cold night air where his car waited. As we pulled away, I saw the first police cruiser turn onto Morrison Street, lights already flashing. Marcus had been right about one thing. He'd had nothing left to lose. Now he had even less than that. The morning light caught on the gold lettering of the sign above the door. Tessa's table. 3 months since we'd opened, and I still couldn't walk past without stopping to stare at it. My name. My restaurant. My dream made real with marble countertops, exposed brick walls, and a menu that featured my grandmother's recipes alongside dishes I'd created during late nights in Dominic's kitchen. You're doing it again, Maria called from inside, her voice carrying through the open door, staring at the sign like you think it might disappear. I laughed, stepping inside where the smell of fresh bread and brewing coffee wrapped around me like a hug. Can you blame me? 6 months ago, I was serving other people's food. Now you're late for whatever Dominic has planned. Maria wiped her hands on her apron, her expression knowing. He called twice this morning. Said to make sure you wore something nice and that you'd be gone for the afternoon. My stomach flipped. He didn't say why. Does he ever? She shooed me toward the back office where I kept a change of clothes.
Go.
I've got the lunch rush covered. And Tessa? Whatever he's planning, say yes. I changed into the cream silk dress Dominic had left hanging in my apartment last week. Our apartment now, though I still sometimes woke up surprised to find myself in his bed, in his life, in this reality that felt too good to be permanent. The fabric whispered against my skin as I moved, elegant, but not ostentatious. Exactly his style. His car was waiting outside, Dominic himself leaning against the rear door in a tailored charcoal suit that made my mouth go dry. His eyes tracked my approach, and the smile that curved his mouth was private, intimate, meant only for me. You look beautiful, he said, opening the door. You look like you're planning something. I slid into the leather interior, hyper-aware of his body as he settled beside me. Maria said you called twice. I wanted to make sure you'd be ready. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. I have something to show you, Dominic. Trust me. He brought my knuckles to his lips, and the gesture still sent heat spiraling through my chest. Just trust me. The drive took 20 minutes, and I knew where we were headed before the car turned onto the familiar street. The sapphire atrium rose ahead of us, all glass and steel and crystalline elegance. The place where my old life had ended, where Dominic had first knelt before me with a ring and a proposition that had changed everything. My hand tightened on his. Dom, why are we? Because this is where our story started. He helped me from the car, his grip steady, grounding. And I wanted to be where the next chapter begins. The mall's main entrance stood ahead, the same marble floors, the same crystal chandelier visible through the windows. My pulse hammered against my throat. I don't understand. You will. He guided me through the doors, his hand never leaving the small of my back. The sapphire atrium stretched before us, exactly as I remembered, soaring ceilings, designer storefronts, marble that reflected light like water. But something was different. The usual weekend crowds were absent. Instead, A circle of people waited beneath the chandelier, all familiar faces. My grandmother in her favorite lavender dress, supported by her nurse, Maria, and the entire staff from the restaurant. Dominic's men in their suits, looking uncomfortable but present. Even Mrs. Chun from the dry cleaners, who'd given me free pressing when Marcus left. They were all watching us. Watching me. Dominic, what is this? My voice came out breathless. He stopped in the center of the atrium, right beneath the massive chandelier where Marcus had once stood. Where I'd been humiliated in front of strangers who'd turned my heartbreak into entertainment. But there were no strangers here now. Only people who knew me, who'd chosen to be here. Dominic turned to face me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Not the controlled Mafia Don. Not the businessman. Just the man who'd held me through nightmares, who'd taught me to take up space, who'd looked at a shy waitress and seen someone worth keeping. 6 months ago, he said, his voice carrying across the atrium, I knelt in this exact spot and put a ring on your finger. I told myself it was business, a contract, a mutually beneficial arrangement. His hands found mine, warm and steady. I was lying. My eyes burned. Dom. Let me finish. His thumb traced circles on my palm. From the moment I saw you sitting on that curb, trying so hard not to break in public, I knew. You were kind when the world had just been cruel. You were strong when you had every reason to crumble. You were exactly the kind of person I didn't deserve but desperately wanted. He lowered himself to one knee, and the world tilted sideways. This wasn't the same man who'd knelt 6 months ago with calculated precision. This was Dominic stripped of armor, vulnerable in a way I'd only seen in the darkness of our bedroom. I put a ring on you to save you then, he said quietly, his dark eyes never leaving mine. I'm putting a ring on you to keep you now. Not for business. Not for appearance. Because I love you, Tessa Morgan. Because you made me believe I could be more than what I was born into. Because every morning I wake up next to you feels like a gift I don't deserve but refuse to give back. He pulled a ring box from his jacket, opened it to reveal a diamond that caught the chandelier light and scattered it into rainbows. Nothing like the ostentatious ring from our fake engagement. This was delicate, elegant, perfect. Marry me, he said.
For real this time.
No contracts. No exit clauses. Just you and me and whatever comes next. The tears spilled over, hot and inevitable and completely joyful. Around us, I heard my grandmother's delighted gasp, Maria's muffled sob. But all I could see was Dominic, kneeling before me like I was worth this grand gesture, like I was worth everything. Yes. The word came out choked, thick with emotion. Yes, you ridiculous man. Yes. He stood, slid the ring onto my finger with hands that trembled slightly, then pulled me into his arms. The kiss was deep, claiming, full of promise. Around us, applause erupted. Genuine, celebratory, nothing like the cruel mockery of 6 months ago. When we finally broke apart, I was laughing and crying at once. You rented out an entire mall. I bought the mall, he corrected, his forehead pressed to mine. 2 weeks ago. Couldn't have anyone interfering with this moment. You bought. I pulled back to stare at him. Dominic. I wanted to replace every memory you had of this place. His smile was pure satisfaction. Wanted you to remember standing here, surrounded by people who love you, while the man who can't live without you promises to spend the rest of his life proving you made the right choice. My grandmother's voice cut through the moment. Are you two going to stand there all day? Or are we going to celebrate? I didn't get dressed up for nothing. Laughter rippled through our small crowd. Dominic took my hand, the new ring catching light, and led me toward the people who'd become our family. Not the mob. Not business associates. Just people who'd shown up because they wanted to be part of our joy. As we walked, I caught our reflection in one of the storefront windows. Dominic in his perfect suit, me in cream silk, both of us smiling like we'd just won the lottery. 6 months ago, I'd walked out of this building broken, convinced I'd never be enough for anyone. Now I walked through it engaged to a man who'd moved heaven and earth to prove I was everything. Maria grabbed me the moment we reached the group, pulling me into a fierce hug. I told you to say yes. You knew. I accused. Everyone knew.
She grinned.
He's been planning this for weeks. Nearly drove us all crazy with the details. My grandmother took my hand, examining the ring with misty eyes. He asked my permission, came to the home, sat in that awful visiting room, and asked properly. I told him you were too good for him, but he could try anyway. I looked at Dominic, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. You asked my grandmother? I asked everyone who matters to you. He pulled me back against his side. Wanted to do this, right? You bought an entire mall. Like I said. His lips brushed my temple. I wanted to do this, right? The celebration moved to a private dining room Dominic had arranged, because of course he had, where champagne flowed and my grandmother told embarrassing stories about my childhood. Where Maria made me promise she'd be in the wedding party. Where Dominic's men gave awkward but genuine congratulations, clearly uncomfortable with this softer side of their boss. Hours later, as the sun began to set and our small party wound down, Dominic pulled me back to the atrium one last time. The chandelier glowed golden in the fading light, and the marble floors reflected our images like we were standing in a dream. Thank you, I said softly, leaning into his warmth. For this. For everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible.
Tessa.
He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with infinite gentleness. You were never invisible. You were just waiting for someone worthy of looking. I kissed him then, in the place where strangers had once watched me break, where this impossible love story had begun with a lie that became the truest thing in my life. When we finally left the sapphire atrium, I didn't look back. There was nothing there but old ghosts and new memories. Everything that mattered was walking beside me, his hand in mine, his ring on my finger, his future tangled irreversibly with mine. Ready to go home, Mrs. Hale? Dominic asked as we reached the car. Not Mrs. Hale yet, I corrected. But yes, take me home. He smiled, that private smile meant only for me. As you wish, amore. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months after that second proposal, I stood in the kitchen of Tessa's table at 5 a.m., my grandmother's recipe book open on the counter, flour dusting my engagement ring. The restaurant had a waiting list 3 weeks long. Food critics were calling my lemon lavender cake transcendent. And somewhere upstairs in the apartment we'd built above the restaurant, Dominic was probably awake, checking his phone, waiting for me to come back to bed. My life had become unrecognizable from the woman who'd stood trembling in a mall, believing she was too small, too poor, too background to deserve love. I thought about Marcus sometimes. Not often, but occasionally. He'd served 8 months for the weapons charge and attempted extortion before his father's lawyers got him out. Last I heard, he was managing a car dealership in Jersey. Vanessa had married a banker and moved to Connecticut. They'd both faded into irrelevance, which felt like the most satisfying ending possible. The universe hadn't punished them with some dramatic downfall. It had simply moved on without them, just like I had. The oven timer chimed. I pulled out the morning's first batch of croissants, buttery, perfect mine. Through the window, the city was beginning to wake up. In a few hours, my staff would arrive. Customers would line up. Life would unfold in all its beautiful, ordinary chaos. But right now, in this quiet moment, I allowed myself to remember. The girl who covered her mouth in shock while her fiancé humiliated her. The girl who'd believed she needed to shrink to deserve space in the world. The girl who almost let shame define her story. I wasn't that girl anymore. I was Tessa Morgan, soon to be Tessa Hale, restaurant owner, Dominic's partner in every sense of the word. A woman who'd learned that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift because it meant when you rose, nobody saw you coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. Come back to bed, amore. The croissants can wait. I smiled, typed back, 5 minutes.
Promise.
His response was immediate. I'm counting. I closed my grandmother's recipe book, turned off the kitchen lights, and headed upstairs, toward the man who'd knelt twice, once with a proposition, once with a promise, toward the life I'd built from the ashes of public humiliation, toward a future that belonged entirely to me. The girl in the peach blouse who couldn't stop shaking? She'd been brave enough to survive the worst day of her life. The woman I'd become? She was brave enough to claim every beautiful day that came after. And that made all the difference. So, what did you think? Did Tessa's comeback have you cheering? Was Dominic's final proposal worth the wait? And, be honest, did Marcus get what he deserved? Or should we have let Dominic handle him the family business way? If you love this story, smash that like button right now. Seriously, it helps more people find stories about women who refuse to stay down when life knocks them flat. Which moment hit you the hardest? The mall humiliation when Marcus proposed to Vanessa right in front of Tessa? When Dominic first swept in and put that ring on her finger? The basement showdown where Tessa saved herself and Dominic? Or that final proposal with, I put a ring on you to save you then, I'm putting a ring on you to keep you now? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know what moment had you feeling all the feelings. Real talk. Would you have gotten in that car with Dominic? Or would you have taken your chances with the photographers? Comment, get in the car, or run for the subway. Let's see where everyone stands. Want more stories like this? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications bell because next week's story is insane. She was the maid at his engagement party until he called it off and got down on one knee in front of her. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. If this story spoke to your soul, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worst moment doesn't get to write their whole story. That being underestimated is sometimes the biggest gift. That the right person will see you when everyone else looks away. Before you go, I have a question for the comments. Team Dominic or Team Marcus never existed? And which proposal was more romantic? The fake one that went viral or the real one surrounded by people who actually loved her? Drop your hot takes below. I'll be in the comments arguing with you. Thanks for watching, and remember, the people who dismiss you are just showing you who won't be there when you rise. And you will rise. See you in the next story.